I think that we should open up the U.S. border to Canadians who want vaccines and can't get them in Canada, said New York Democrat Brian Higgins in an interview with We Have Surplus Vaccines Here in the United States, here in Western New York, that are not being used. And if they're not being used, they get discarded as medical waste. Why shouldn't a Canadian come over to our community and get vaccinated? Somebody seeking a vaccine should be allowed to come over and they should be deemed an essential traveler, Higgins added. His comments come as frustration mounts among Canadian mayors whose communities lie along the border with the U.S., and who say they are being stymied by red tape from Canadian health officials when they try to take up offers from American counterparts to share vaccines. They also come amid calls on the Canadian government from tourism industry stakeholders to provide more clarity on when the border will reopen and what rules will be in place for fully vaccinated travelers. Mayors from the Ontario cities of Windsor and Niagara Falls told the House of Commons Health Committee last week that coveted doses of the life-saving vaccines are being thrown out just a few kilometers across the border every day. They said there's no reason the cities should be barred from accepting offers from pharmacists and local officials to share the doses with Canadians. We have 35,000 doses that hit the trash 2 kilometers away from where I'm sitting at the very moment, Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkin said to the committee on Monday. Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati told Global News he's also been forced to turn down offers. Our American counterparts are asking us, we've got these extra vaccines. Are you interested in them before we throw them in the landfill? We'd rather put them into an arm than a landfill, he said. Multilingual vaccine messaging hits different, says Sana Maboob. Lack of equitable vaccine access for some Manitobans of color. Sanjana Vijayan. South Asian Filipino Manitobans share pro-vaccine message in multiple languages. This couple's road trip home to Nova Scotia became a race across the country remembering life in the Kamloops residential school. Here's why this woman is protesting access to mental health care. A multi-faith march and Friday prayers honored the Afzal family. Ruth B. on returning home and recording her new album during the pandemic after tragedy. How the London community is mourning taking a walk. A simple step for some, but a deep fear for many Muslims. Regina man recovers after COVID-19 put him in a 5-week coma. Parents and teachers push for better anti-racism education. Edmonton moves to remove and rename all references to those tied to residential schools. Canada commits 100 million COVID-19 vaccine doses for poorer countries at G7 summit. Ontario enters stage 1 of reopening after several months of lockdown. Some provinces move to have different guidelines for the fully vaccinated. And we've got arms here that would be willing hosts for these vaccines. David Muzij, president and CEO at Windsor Regional Hospital, told Global News the owners of the Ambassador Bridge running between Windsor and Detroit sent a proposal to the federal and Ontario government proposing setting up a vaccination center at the end of the U.S. section of the bridge. The idea, he said, was that Canadians could drive across, receive their vaccine without leaving their vehicle, and drive right back across the bridge, or meet at a site in the border tunnel between the two cities where an American nurse could give them the shot across the border boundary. But the Public Health Agency of Canada has rejected such offers, according to a letter obtained by Global News that said having a nurse reach across the border to give the shot would constitute importation of product, which isn't allowed. With respect to the setup of the proposed clinic, please be aware that vaccine cannot be imported into Canadian space without the express consent of Health Canada. It is our understanding that actual vaccination, in other words, administration of the vaccine into a patient's arm, will occur on the U.S. side of the border, stated the letter. However, if the U.S. nurse or pharmacist reaches across the border to administer it to a person in Canada, that is considered importation of product and requires an expression of no objection from Health Canada. Nearly half of Americans have received both doses of a COVID-19 vaccine, and the country faced criticism over its ban on exporting vaccines to other countries. Canada's early supplies of the vaccines came from factories in Europe, but are now starting to arrive from the U.S. facilities of Pfizer and Moderna amid a significant jump in supply. Roughly 70% of eligible Canadians have now received at least a first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. But the rate of second-dose vaccination remains low at just over 9%, as of Friday. Higgins said the widening availability of vaccines highlights the need for Canadian and U.S. officials to commit to a better vision on how to reopen the border, focusing first on fully vaccinated people. I think that if you allow people that have been vaccinated to cross the border, that would be an incentive for people that may be skeptical of vaccines or are afraid of needles, he said. There should be some recognition of those who have been fully vaccinated to be able to reunite with loved ones, to be able to visit their properties and to be able to transact business toward the goal of a larger opening of the U.S.-Canadian border.